This is my Peugeot 307 facelift 1.6 petrol TU5JP4 engine. This is a video how to replace the 4 injectors in these engines. Stay tuned. So the problem with these engines, the design of these engines, is that the 4 injectors down there, they're not really accessible. One has to remove the air intake manifold, the whole air intake manifold, in order to take these injectors. So all this piping needs to be taken off, these as well, and then a few bolts is not too difficult, a few bolts at the back, and then the air manifold could be taken out and then injectors replaced. So first I'm gonna start with these pipes up to the dozer unit. If you really, I'm just putting out, some of the stuff will be really in a high-speed mode, but if you want to see how these are removed, check out my video here for doing the antifreeze on these engines. Next thing is that pipe that comes from the crankcase, goes in the intake. It's got 2 squeezy things from top and bottom, but it's a bit difficult. I mean, I cannot put any of my fingers. Finally, so at the end I had my finger underneath and the screwdriver on top pushing on that, and this came out. So also, in order to see what I'm doing, because I can't quite see behind the scuttle panels, I'll remove the scuttle panels with if you really want to see how this is done, there is a really good video how to undo the screen wiper, so I'll have this on speed mode. So once the bolts are released, one can simply lift it slightly and then pull backward this whole beam. I can only film half of it, so it's a bit, I cannot really have a much bigger shot, but basically what you need to do is slightly lift it up here. There is a catch, and then you can kind of pull it backwards, the same with the other side, and this then whole beam could be taken out. So then this scuttle, it's a bit on the trickier side. I mean, you kind of pull it and then it has to clear this for the windscreen wipers, the wipers. But then in the middle, you have to kind of pull it out in the middle, because there is a plastic that goes on the windscreen. Let me show it, just half of it. Probably it's easier. And then it's the same with the other side. You have to kind of release the rubber, and then you kind of pull it a bit. It's kind of theo everywhere. I mean, it's kind of pull it a bit, and it's always a bit tricky. You have to do it from that side, then from the other, and then you can pull it. I've released it from the other side, so from this side will be again the same thing. Try to clear everything and just pull it, and that whole beam from both sides could be kind of removed. It's like a whole piece, and now there is a pretty nice view, and then the collector could be much easier taken out from the front. So I managed to remove all this foamy kind of bit that prevents water. So the last one, everything's pretty easy. So the last one, this on the kind of right, it's held by 2 clips, one here and one there, and these are simply plastic. I'm not too sure if you can see it, probably it's too much light, but it's like a plastic thing that you unscrew with fingers. It doesn't need to have a screwdriver or anything. It's supposed to be a screwdriver, but with fingers you can undo them. They're not really that easy, and then this could be removed. So in order to remove that clip, one needs to really push on that pin here and then pull it out. So push it to the as much as you can, and then it's a simple removal like that. So basically it's pushing it down here on that and pulling it out. So now this pipe can be unclipped. There is a clip, it clips underneath. It's a simple pushing it out, and then this whole thing could be put aside, so it's not kind of in the way. Well, I'm at it at also remove that. It's basically you there is a clip underneath, so you push it towards you and it should come out. There we go. That's also unclipped. These cables are also held by a zip tie here that I need to cut. Instead of passing up from there, they're held by a zip tie, so I need to cut that one, and then of course assembling it I need to put another zip tie there. The cable could be kind of pushed apart. Next thing, I'll remove the dozer unit, just give me more space so I can put my hand and do the bolts at the back. It's got a plug here that you kind of lift. The plug, you lift that side and it should push out. It's a bit difficult on camera, and there we go, and then unclip it from the cable here. It's got 3 bolts, one here, one only there, one here, and it's T30 hex. And then the unit you basically dropped, but basically you take it out. That's the dozer unit. One could clean it as well. Of course, there's also a vacuum hose there at the back. It's a squeezy from 2 sides, so that needs to be unplugged as well. Next thing, of course, is this cable here, and it's got a clip here that you just basically pull. It's a clip, one of these clips that you just need to pull out, and then basically it's putting it back on again, just pushing it. Next thing is that clip here that you push just the pipes, and that kind of swings. So next thing is to depressurize the fuel system, and there are 2 ways. If you don't have that valve here, you take the fuse for the fuel pump in the fuse box, start the car until it stops. When it runs out of fuel, then start it again until it doesn't want to start, and then the system should be depressurized. But if you have the valve, you can do it with that one. Basically, it's a tire valve. You press inside and depressurizes the system. But the thing is that there will be fuel squirted everywhere, so you have to dump stuff in a lot of racks around so it doesn't spray everywhere. So I stuffed it around with quite a lot of tissue and some old socks, and I have another one to put on top and press through it, so when it squirts this will gather the fuel that leaks. Let me unscrew it. So it's like a tire valve. Basically you press in the middle and it should squirt fuel. I mean, there is a really good video if you want to see that in action. There is a really good video here. I cannot push it through, so I cut a hole and just put it there. Hopefully that would work out. Otherwise I cannot quite see where I'm pointing. I mean, so I press it in the middle, but it doesn't really, so there is probably no pressure in the system. Next thing is to undo the hose, and just to be on the safe side, I also put quite a few rags underneath here, just in case this leaks. But it shouldn't. I mean, this does not really release anything, so probably it's depressurized. I mean, I've kept the car for a couple of days, so probably the pressure has dropped. So undoing that one, it's a squeezy, again squeezy, so let's see if that will squirt some fuel or not. That's a real struggle to remove the fuel pipe there. So what I decided, I have these long nose pliers. I've put a nut there, and I'll tape it. Hopefully that will stay. So I've taped 2 nuts on that side, Try to squeeze it. They're probably tools, but I didn't really think it would be that difficult to do. Hopefully I'll squeeze it from both sides and kind of undo it. Yes, that went really good. So in order to undo that pipe, there was a little bit of fuel leak, but not that much. So in order to undo that pipe, put one of these long nose pliers, 2 nuts, tape, and just squeeze it and pull it out. This actually works fairly well. Next is down in the back. There are 4 bolts in the middle and 2 nuts on both sides, and 1 smack bang in the middle. I'm not gonna show it because it's too difficult and I can't put any camera in there, but it's just feel where they are and undo them. I'll show them when I take this off. I'll show where these nuts and the bolts are. But here is a visual guide how it looks like. So there are 4 bolts in the middle. 1 in the very middle, it's a nut, and 2 nuts and the 2 sides. So it looks like this. Basically, you have to undo them with a socket. So what is at the back? This is in the middle, goes like that, with a nut, 13mm nut, and there are 4 bolts in the middle, 8mm bolts, and 2 nuts on both sides. So I only haven't done the nuts. I'll undo them now, and then it should be fairly easy to take out, perhaps. So if I'm done, the 4 bolts in the middle, 2 nuts are kind of from both sides, the one at the middle. There is a plug that you kind of unscrew at the very back. I'll show it once I take it out. So now I should be basically trying to take it out. Let me see if I can squeeze it from that side or probably from down there. Let's see how this will go. Slightly rocking, I don't want to break anything. There we go. That's almost out. Well, let's see if I can squeeze it through here. No, I cannot squeeze it through here. So probably will be that side. Put it down there, and then I'll try to squeeze it from this side. Too many things, and there is a small leaf. Let's see if I can squeeze it from that side. Oh yeah, that's coming out. Whew. There we go. I took it out. I have a bigger shot. Let me do it now. It's just easier. Well, that's the intake. So that's the middle bolt here. The middle nut with this kind of bracket that goes like that and goes like that. This bracket. The 4 bolts that go here, here, and here. the two nuts that go on the two sides. And here is from the other side. This has leaked a bit of petrol because I had it tilted, and there is the plug at the end, so you basically unclip it and pull it out. So this is how it's outside and how it looks. There are 4 seals, and I have brand new seals for those for the air intake to replace these, because these are probably quite old and I don't want to reuse them. So it will make a good seal from a juicer. So all the components are in the description of the video down below. So here are the 4 injectors down here. So you don't need to unplug those. In order to take it out. They go to a common cable down in the back. Let me turn it around so you can see down in the back. I'm trying not to shake it too much because there is still a bit of fuel. So that's they go in this common plug, and this is the plug at the back. So you unplug it here with a finger, or when you feel it down in the back, and unplug it. So here is the one nut that goes on that side, the 4 bolts down there, and another nut on that side. So the middle nut is down here, and it goes to the bottom, goes like that. That's a nut, and there is a bolt coming through. So one thing I noticed, so now there are 2 bolts that hold this rail, the fuel rail. So if I undo these 2 nuts, this should all lift out, and then you can take it out. What I notice is when they've done this bolt originally, they've cracked the plastic here, so I have to repair that. I have a video that for repairing plastic, so I'll try to stick a metal here that heats and put it together, so this will be nice and sturdy when I do it again. So I don't want to buy a whole new fuel rail. So the next thing is I will undo the plugs and measure the resistance. I mean, you can do it while this is on the car. So if you know, the resistance should be roughly about 12 ohms. I have 4 brand new Bosch injectors, and they're roughly about 11 ohms. So brand new, they should be roughly about 11 or 10.9, 11.3, plus minus 0.5 ohms. So I measured these 4 to see how much they are. I think that one, this is 4321, that's how they are labeled. So I think the number 3 one it's much lower than the other, so they should be roughly about the same, plus minus 0.5 of each other. So unplug those. So basically you squeeze it down here and lift it up like that. And then I'll measure those now just to see what the resistance is. And but I believe that one is a bit. And also spray a bit of something. I have a PB blaster. I mean, you can't quite see it. PB blaster. It's penetrating oil. Just a bit on those. So when I undo them, it will be a bit easier. But you can use WD-40 or something. But it's just to be slightly easier. And on that one as well. So then when I undo them, it will be slightly easier. It won't be that hard. So now I can, because this is out, I can measure the resistance of each of the injectors. I think they're all right, or at least I measured the 4321, the third one, a bit off, but I might have not touched it correctly. So hopefully you can see the multimeter there. So let's see how the first one is. So they should be 12 ohms plus minus 0.5. First one, it's 11.7. That's actually pretty good. Second one, 11.7, exactly the same. Third one, it's 11.7, exactly the same. Fourth one, it's 11.6. So the resistance is all pretty good between all of them. So they're roughly about 11.7. So it's 12 ohms is the new one, plus minus 0.5. And I really have a a brand new Bosch injector here. All the description of the components is in the description of the video. I purchased it from Autodoc, and Bosch is the same. It's the same number. Let me take it out. So I've already kind of opened the injector. So let me measure that one. I mean, let's see how a brand new injector is. Probably about the same. So brand new injector is 11.7, 11.6. So it's nearly about the same as these ones, but the resistance doesn't show you everything. They could be slightly clocked. This wouldn't really affect the resistance. One kind of needs to take them off and see the spray pattern and so on, whether they spray good enough, but I don't have these facilities. I could send them somewhere, but each of these costs roughly about 28 pounds, so it's not really that expensive. It's not that difficult to remove, so I'll replace them anyway. But you can test them, clean them, and put through liquid through them. There are several videos of those, but for the price, I'm not really going to do that. Also, in order to, because when I undo these bolts and lift this up, this will go with the plugs and so on. So I would like to remove those. So I have one of these panel removal kits. So let's see if I can stick it underneath behind. Hopefully there is a bit more light and you can see. I can squeeze it underneath and kind of push it. There we go. That could be taken out, and then I simply push in afterwards. I mean, they will probably slightly on the damage side, but I could replace those. So, but that's absolutely fine. There we go. I've also taken this out. So now when there is an access to these two bolts, lift it up. So lift the whole rail and then undoing the injectors. Next thing is to undo these two bolts. So in order to lift so these are 10 millimeter and they're a bit rusty, so yeah, this turned. You really need a thin torque wrench to put it in the back, and that one as well, but that's quite a lot rusty. And I have to kind of remove a bit of the rust, otherwise my 10 doesn't want to get in. So let's see, that bolt I already kind of started it, so that's kind of alright. So I can undo those bolts. They only rusted at the top. Kind of rusted at the top, but not. They kind of rusted at the top, but not at the bottom, of course. That's understandable. And now they should be able to kind of push it, lift the whole rail. But let's see how this will go. Yeah, you can kind of squeeze it. It should be tight fit. It's a bit more difficult to push those out. There we go. I took it out from one side and then from the other should be able to kind of push it. Only so 3 injectors are out, only that one is still not kind of out. There we go. And now I can take it out. So this is the rail with the injectors, and there is a bit of a petrol inside. They kind of look all right. That's the rail, and this is at the back. So these are all 057. Let me see if this matches my 028, 158, 057. Yeah, it matches, so the same that I've bought. And next thing is basically unclip it from that side, and the whole injector drops, but I have to tip from here the petrol that is still inside the rail. And that's how this looks like. I also bought this Wi-Fi endoscope camera for a variety of things. Kind of basically look at where I can reach. So now it's a good opportunity to go back there and look at the back of the valves just to see if anything's out of the ordinary. So this is the view from the camera going from the top of the engine to the first port of the air intake, and it's a bit difficult. I mean, you can kind of have to go along with this because it's upside down, but it has a really good view, and you can do the adjust the brightness, so it's actually quite good. So I can really look at the first valve and how clean it is. I mean, it's a bit awkward pulling left and right to put it in there, but it's actually all right. I mean, you can see at the back of the valves, so they're pretty clean because petrol washes those, but it looks quite all right. So it's basically looking at those. It's kind of testing. I mean, I really like it because I can plug it in. I also use it to plug in the spark plugs and check how coated the cylinders are. But it's actually quite good. They look pretty amazing, pretty decent. These valves at the back. So the left is also, so they're two per cylinder, the in and two of the out, so 16 altogether. Yeah, but it's quite useful. And then, of course, I'll use this camera just to look at where the seals of the intake, do I need to clean them? So I'm looking at those, how clean they are, because it's at the back of the engine. So that's actually quite easy to do, just to observe how dirty and how much do I need to clean. So next thing, I need to take the injectors off, then clean these inside with brake cleaner fluid, clean those as well. Hopefully there will be no debris and so on, but taking them out should be pretty easy. There is only one way they can go. They have a stop thing here and a plastic, so there is only one way it can go. But let's see if I can kind of undo them. Yeah, they're pretty easy. Basically, with a screwdriver, they just completely come off, and then putting them on, it's in down between, and the other way around. They come like that, so it's pretty easy actually. It goes like that. There is a groove down here on the injector where this slots in. Next is to remove the injectors, and I suspect you just unplug it with a slight rotation. It's a bit on the tight side. Finally. So this is actually pretty tight, quite tight. This rubber down here, I mean, you cannot quite see inside, but there's almost nothing. Pretty tight. And then this goes in this groove, down on the injector, goes like that, and it slots like that up there once it's plugged in. And then I'll remove the rest and then cleaning it. So this is my tool. I have a video, it's in the description of the video, and also probably will appear here, that uses one of these small metal bits that you can stick in plastic. So it heats it up, uses resistance, heats it up, and then you slightly twist it inside the plastic, and when this cools down, it's really quite sturdy. So check out this video, how it works out. It's quite cool for plastic. It really work quite well. The problem with that one is that I cannot squeeze it. I mean, it's not squeezable. It's just probably there is a bit of a rust and so on, so it has expanded a bit and has cracked in there. So I just want to stick one in between here, so it just keeps it not for expanding. Okay, so you stick inside this metal thing. There is a button. You press it, holding it, you press it, it melts the plastic, you release it, cools down, and then you can snip them off. There we go. That's nice and sticking out, and it will be holding quite a bit. I'll melt it around so it doesn't look so jaggedy. Snip these off. So it's a bit jaggedy now. I'll polish it a bit with this particular tool from the tool set. Basically just scrape it and slightly melt the plastic. Next thing is to try to remove these old seals and put new seals. And I have these juicer new seals, but they are a bit on the small size, so I suspect these get stretched to fit in there. So I'll just remove one, try to fit in this one. If it doesn't work, I'll reuse the old ones. So let me see how I can take it out without damaging it. Stuff is dropping everywhere. Okay. Maybe I'll use the same ones, because they seem completely different sizes and diameters. That's what they've given. So that's probably not quite the same, but let me see if I can squeeze this one in. Maybe we're okay, but I doubt it. Next thing is to put the injectors back in, to push them in, and I've taped them so it doesn't get dirt and so on. So let's see, this will be probably a bit on the difficult side to push them in, but let's see. Remove that one. I won't remove the bottom, so I'll dip only slightly to have a bit of a oil on the seal, so it won't be completely dry. If I can push this to the top, how difficult this is gonna be. Yeah, that was actually quite easy. Basically push it in and it's quite alright. Actually, it doesn't need to be that much, because then one needs to put that in, which slots in there. Well, slots in there, right? Slightly to the side. So basically it's a bit of a, it doesn't need to go that much inside. And then it's slotting that, it has to align, and slot it in between like that. Like that, and just to see that it has clicked everywhere, and that's it. This is actually nice and stable, so that's actually quite alright. And like that, the next three injectors. Next thing is to fit it, so I fit it in onto the rail with the caps on. Remove the caps, put a bit of oil at the end of the injector nozzle. Let me take it out, put only slightly oil around there so it's not really completely dry. And then slot them in the holes. This has to go in front like that. Put it inside and then stick it in, and of course tie the bolts. Already put a bit of oil. Next is the rail, and this has to go inside. Trying to position them, maybe they're a bit towards the back. There we go. Sorry for the shaking, but I'm holding it with 2 hands, so they all go inside, and kind of push it inside. Hopefully they will go It's a bit more difficult than I suspect. Got from that side. Try to push them one by one, otherwise it's a bit way too difficult to push. Maybe from that side. Well, I push it from that side, but it comes out from the other side. So basically you have to hold it from the one side and then push it from the other one as well. Every time I pop it from one side, it comes out from the other, so I'll put one of the bolts just to tie it up a bit, and so it doesn't come out. And then these two are a bit more difficult. I have to press it a bit from up. We'll see how this goes. Let's see if my tactic kind of will work. Yeah, that actually worked fairly well. Let me put that bolt in just so it doesn't come out. And then I have to push these two, but they kind of pushed all right. Yeah, that's actually okay. Managed to push it in. That will be clipped in there. That will be clipped in there. So that's actually all right. I'll just wiggle them a bit and put them down. But yeah, it actually worked. Worked all right. The four, I mean, you cannot quite see them from the light. Maybe you can see one there. I mean, let me see. You can one kind of can inspect it looking from that side whether they're pushed in quite. Let me see if they're pushed enough. You can kind of see they're all quite okay, and I'll reuse these seals because the juicer, they stick out too much. So I'll stick those in just because it's easier not to be in the way. Actually, first I'll plug in the injectors. I can plug in those. Is it just push it? That's in, and that one as well. There we go, that's nice and steady. Next to tie these two bolts, and that's 8 Newton meters. And of course next is to put it on the car and fit all these. So next thing, apologies for the aluminium foil, I just didn't want any dirt to come inside. This is the inlet manifold, so I have to just install it, and I will reuse the same seals because I couldn't really find anywhere what to buy for this. I mean, the juicer and everybody else is completely different seals, so I don't know what to do with those. So everything's correct, I just have to slide it from the right side. So in general, it will just, the several pins, one will go here, one will go there, one will go there, so I can kind of slot it in its place. And then it's basically 2 nuts, 4 bolts, and a nut at the bottom, the clamp that I showed. That should be actually, that should be absolutely all right. Now, I just need to tie the 2 nuts at the sides, the middle nut, and the 4 bolts. I'll give the Newton meters, what the different Newton meters are, but I cannot really film anything because it's just too tight. But it's basically just 4 nuts, 4 bolts in the middle, 2 nuts on the sides, and 1 in the middle. So here are the Newton meters, and you can see on this graph, so the middle is 80 Newton meters, and the 4 bolts, so the middle nut is 80 Newton meters, the 4 bolts are 8 Newton meters, and 2 nuts on the sides are also 8 Newton meters. Next is these 2 pipes, they have to be pushed in this plastic there, and the feet, which I need to click in the for the fuel. There we go. That's the high pressure that feeds the rail. Next is that pipe, which kind of swings. So actually not that pipe, but there is the two electrical components that were above here on underneath, actually not even above, they were underneath here. Put them aside, so this goes in there and this clips in here. I can clip that one and this underneath, and I have a small zip tie. As before there was a zip tie, I never really found any use of these zip ties, these small zip ties, so I'll stick that one in there, and then that I'll hook up here as it was before. Next is that to clip on this metal goes here and has a rubber kind of thing. Kind of push it until it kind of fits in there. There we go. That has to be clipped here. There we go. And it's a tight push. Then these two need to go in here. And that one. Next thing is the throttle body dozer unit, bolts like that. So there are three bolts, one there, and there. The torque of this is 9.5 Newton meters. And I'll put, of course, a little bit of oil on the seal. I should have put on the other seals, but just only slightly, so it doesn't get on dry. So that's 9.5 Newton meters, and it says max on these three bolts. Of course, there is a vacuum pipe at the back from down there to there is a hole here, so that needs to be plugged in. Of course, the plug for the dozer unit, for the throttle unit, and I have to find where there we go, where I've put it. Has to be clipped in here, and of course plugged in that, and make sure it's nice and secure. Next is actually this huge plastic thing, and I'm gonna film only one side because it's just easier than both sides. But what there is this thing that goes here on the windscreen, and this goes on top. It's a bit of a wiggle to fit it in, so it's a bit of a fiddly thing. Let's see how this will go. This might not have been too bad. The rubber goes underneath the seal here, and this also goes inside. The other side as well, then the bar underneath kind of slots in. Next, of course, fitted those, but next, of course, is these things underneath, the kind of velvety things that pick up any moisture and so on, so they have to be tucked in before the big bar is put there. I'm not gonna film that because it's just tucking them in and it takes quite a long time. So I fitted the plastic and the kind of felt thing. Next thing is this big bar, and I'm gonna film only one side. They have a thing here and the bolt goes through there, so they fit. The one big thing fits like that. So position that from one side. You can only see one side, but I'll do for both sides. This edge goes underneath here to kind of prevent water coming in. Hopefully I can squeeze it in from both sides. And of course 2 bolts for that one. So I've put all the scuttles and these I've clipped in. I didn't film them, but it's fairly obvious what to do. Next thing is to put the filter box in, not the filter. This is always in the way, this negative for the battery. So this has to go in. There is a catch here, a hole that goes underneath here. Not to just to be aware, not really mess it up, to be under, otherwise it might vibrate. Always find this part a bit tricky, holding everything and pushing this thing underneath. Well, but it should fit in there. There we go. And this kind of slots in the dose unit, the meter unit, so kind of push it that side. Might as well in push that crankcase breather, and I think this should be quite alright. Next thing is to tie up this. That's a screwdriver that you have to screw in. There is also a bolt down here that needs to be screwed in. Next, the 2 screws for the... Of course, I've removed the battery, so needs the battery in there. Next is the resonator here. Got this pipe. That's always a bit tricky, so I'll push it there. Next thing is to secure that. I mean, I've pushed it too much. It needs to be pushed on that side so it kind of is secure. I mean, you can, so then it's kind of pushing it to a bit. It's always a bit whether you just push it in, but it won't really go, so it has to be rotated slightly and then pushed inside and rotated back, and that should be okay. Make sure that it's in both sides. It is in both sides and it doesn't really move, so that's actually alright there. One of the last thing is to put the clips in there, to put this on. Of course, one last thing is to put the wipers on. They are not very difficult base view. Put them in kind of horizontal to the frame. This one is slightly higher than the other one, and just simply tying it on, but don't screw it up too much because it will crack. It will crack, so it doesn't need to be tied too much. Well, that's it. I really hope that it's useful to someone how to replace the injectors in this TU5JP4 Peugeot Citroen 1.6 petrol engines. It's not really difficult. It's fairly easy. You can follow all these steps. I'll have all the description of the components in the description of the video, so you can see what the numbers are, where you can purchase them from, or you can find them anywhere online. So thank you very much indeed for watching. I really hope that it's useful to someone who has spent quite a bit of time to edit this video. Subscribe. Let me know for any comments in the comment section. Thank you very much indeed for watching.